Hello, Year 10. So again, thank you to the cover teacher for pausing this video in advance whenever I say during the video. And this is a question that you have done this year, actually, in UK in the 21st Century unit. So please make sure that you are revising actively this question by practicing, by learning off the key vocabulary, put it into developed ideas on your own, practicing, and then trying to cover up that information, come back to it in chunks, and make sure that you are, like I said, actively revising that information, not just staring at it on a page. So, question says, evaluate the importance of the UK's role in one global conflict that you've studied. We're just going to go straight into it. Evaluate means that we need to give the successes of this involvement that the UK has had, or its importance, and its failures. So its role will have been important successfully in some ways, and it will have been important in other ways where they have failed to protect the people of the Ukraine. So UK, we're talking about things like the government, charity organisations, anything that you can bring in that you've learnt off. So that's going to be our one example, and then the example itself is of the Ukraine and Russian conflict. So just some key dates for you to remember for the for the tier 3 vocabulary and data that we're going to include in this question. It starts off when in 1994, after the fall of the USSR, we've got the signing of the Budapest Memorandum, and the UK oversees this as a signatory state. So the UK oversees the Budapest Memorandum, and if you remember correctly, that this is when Russia agrees to leave the Ukraine alone, not do things like invade or try to annex and take other places from the Ukraine back to Russia, back for Russian control. So that's what Russia promises to do, and in promising that, the Ukraine must disarm their nuclear weapons. So agrees to nuclear disarmament. So making sure that you get this down. So that's 1994. We then had about 20 years of peace, relative peace. But in 2014, the annexation of Crimea takes place. That means that politically and through in kind of semi-invasion, Russia takes back or seizes control of the area of Crimea in the southeast. If my geography serves me well, the southeast of the country. So politically and through semi-invasion, they seize control of Crimea, or the Crimean region. In response to this, the UK put on sanctions, put economic sanctions in place on Russia. They also supported at the borders in countries like Hungary and Bulgaria. That would have been to help for the escape of people who wanted to leave Crimea, as it was now going to be under Russian control. And they did not provide they did not provide any armed weapons. So no arms provided to the Ukraine. And then in 2022, so last year, skipping about 8 years ahead, we've got the beginning of the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. So we have Ukraine versus Russia. Russia invades, and the Ukraine attempts to kind of fight back. And what the UK has done in response to that is they've provided anti-air tanks, missiles. They've provided emergency aid, and they've also, of course, allowed for migrants to come to the UK, being supported by families. And finally, more economic sanctions, like were mentioned above, 65 plus economic sanctions to date. And these were placed on Russian oligarchs, who are these kind of people with close connections to Vladimir Putin, who live or have operations like Roman Abramovich controlling Chelsea. So they live or have some kind of company or organisation in the UK or property. So these sanctions were placed on Russian oligarchs. This could have included taking away their property or forcing them to sell something to another company, like the sale of Chelsea. So you can write sale of Chelsea if that helps you to remember this. Okay, so how would you write an answer to this question? So I'm going to start off with the first section and a developed idea about that, and then you follow with two more developed ideas about the annexation of Crimea and the invasion of the Ukraine. So we're going to start off by saying the UK has had an important role in the Ukraine and Russian conflict. And we can say here that this dating back as far as 1994. Even earlier, but we're going to start it at that. So that's our point. We're just going to develop that a little bit further, and we're going to say it was relatively successful in brokering peace, or kind of negotiating peace, as part of NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. In 1994, they oversaw the signing of the Budapest Memorandum. And then this meant that Russia left Ukraine alone, while Ukraine disarmed its nuclear weapons. And that peace lasted for almost 20 years. And I think that is clear that this shows the UK played a role in keeping peace between the two nations. So that is, you've seen, I'm just going to highlight where we've got evidence here. We have got evidence there. We've got evidence down here where we mentioned the signing of the Budapest Memorandum and the information about the 20 years of peace, and then we just develop that. We make sure that we link this to an explanation of the UK having a successful role for 20 years. So you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to use that information on the 2014 annexation of Crimea and the 2022 invasion. Good luck with that question. If you have any information that you need to kind of look back on throughout this video, you can ask the teacher to go back to any point of it. It should only be a 10-minute video in total. Best of luck with that during the cover lesson.